So in the last video we looked at how we could add two complex numbers together or subtract one complex number from another. And now I'd like to look at how to multiply two complex numbers together. It turns out that multiplying one complex number by another is just as easy as expanding brackets or multiplying two binomials together. So to show you what I mean, let's try to find the product z1 times z2. That's the product of these two complex numbers, a plus bi and c plus di. Remember that a, b, c, and d are just real numbers, and I is the imaginary unit. Remember that I is defined so that I squared equals minus 1. So let's find the product z1, z2. We've got to multiply a plus bi and c plus di. I'm just substituting the complex numbers together. So when we expand the brackets, that's all multiplication of complex numbers is. What happens when we expand these brackets? We've got a times c, that's our first term, and we've got a times di, so plus a di. Then we've got bi times c, or bci, so that's plus bci. And finally we've got bi di, so we've got b di squared. So now if we collect the real parts together, we've got AC. Notice that I squared is minus 1. So BDI squared is just minus BD. So that's minus BD. And I've got a plus I, because I've got two terms with an I in it, plus AD plus BC. So you notice that if I multiply two complex numbers together, I get another complex number, which has a real part AC minus BD, and has an imaginary part AD plus BC. And that's all there is to it, really. I mean, when you multiply two complex numbers together, just as I said, it's really just about multiplying two brackets together. So let's do a few examples just to solidify that fact. So let's look at the product of the two complex numbers 1 plus 2i and 3 plus 4i. So these are just complex numbers that I picked at random. So we've got 1 times 3, which is 3. We've got 1 times 4i, which is plus 4i. 2i times 3 is just 6i. And 2i times 4i is 8i squared. So that's plus 8i squared. Well, we've got 3 plus 4i plus 6i is 10i. And we've got 8i squared, but again, I squared is by definition minus 1. So 8i squared is 8 times minus 1, which is minus 8. So it's 3 plus 10i minus 8. Now 3 minus 8 is minus 5 plus 10i. So minus 5 plus 10i is the product of these two complex numbers. Let's look at another example. Let's look at it 6i times 1 minus 2i. Well, again, even though we've only got the single term here, we've still got to distribute this term to each of these terms inside the bracket. So we've got 6i times 1, which is 6i. Then we've got 6i times minus 2i. 6i times minus 2i is minus 12i squared. Minus 12i squared. That's the same thing as 6i times... Well, minus 12 times I squared is minus 12 times minus 1. And minus 12 times minus 1 is positive 12. So that's plus 12. So that's our solution. Let's look at one more example. Let's look at 1 minus I squared. Remember that squaring something is the same as multiplying that thing by itself. So 1 minus I squared is the same as 1 minus I times 1 minus I. Now we've just got to expand the brackets. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times minus I is minus I. Minus I times 1 is again minus I. And minus I times minus I is positive I squared, so that's plus I squared. That's just equal to 1 minus I, which is minus 2i, plus I squared. But I squared is just minus 1, so that's minus 1. So collecting these terms together or simplifying these, I just get 1 minus 1, which is 0, minus 2i, which is just minus 2i.